Hi and welcome. I'm Lisa. Thanks for joining me here on the Whimsy Stamps channel for another card making tutorial. Today I'm sharing a few easy Halloween cards plus a fun double dry embossed background technique. The great thing about this technique, you can use it with any embossing folders for any occasion. I'm going to be using the Bats Galore and Broken Web Slimline embossing folders during this video. A few people may have seen this card I shared during the product reveal for the Happy Pugaween stamp set, and I used the same double embossed background. Now to get us started with this, I have my folders here, a white heavyweight cardstock. And I prefer a heavyweight cardstock because when you run your paper through the embossing folders, it tends to weaken it. So if you start with a heavier cardstock, you'll still have a pretty sturdy base to work with. Now I'm using 4¼ by 5½ inch pieces for this demonstration. But you can do this with a card base. You just want to fold the back side of that card base underneath your embossing folder while you're running it through your die cutting machine. I'm going to be using a T-ruler and a pencil so I can lay some tick marks down on the sides of my paper to make lining those up easier in the embossing folder. I feel like it's key to this so that your designs are nice and straight. All right, so when doing this, I normally use a large embossing machine, but I wanted you to see that you could do this with a 6-inch platform. So I'm using the Spellbinders machine. Before that, I used a Sizzix Big Kick with no problems at all. If you have a different machine, I just recommend give it a try and see if it works for you. Now, when using the 6-inch platform, you always have to be mindful of where you're embossing to allow room for the paper and the folder to clear your machine. And remember, you're making 2 passes through the machine. You have to always keep that in mind when you're doing this, and if you do, you shouldn't have any issues. Now, if you have the larger platform machine, none of this is going to be an issue for you. I'm using the ruler to add some tick marks to the card panel so I can line this panel up in the folder. Now the Broken Web embossing folder is perfect because it has this gorgeous thick border around the edge of it, and it creates this beautiful divide between the web pattern and the second pattern, which in this case is going to be bats. So I'm going to line the tick marks up along the edge of that border. Now, if you don't have a border in your design, you can just line the tick marks up along the edge of the folder. I do recommend that you use some type of low-tack tape to hold the paper in place. So I'm just going to place a piece of removable Scotch tape to the back side of the folder and the paper to hold it in place. Before running this through the machine, I'm going to spritz it with alcohol. You can use water instead. I just prefer alcohol. It dries faster. This extra step does wonders for your embossing. It helps eliminate cracking and tearing of the paper, and it does give you a deeper, crisper embossing. So lay your folder down on your platform, add an embossing mat, and then I'm going to add my cutting plate for this sandwich and then run it through. So this seems to work best with this Spellbinders machine and the Whimsy folders. So here you see we have this gorgeous web embossed on our paper. So let's run that back through with the Bats Galore, just lining the bats up along the top of that border to keep it straight. I'm also going to spray it with alcohol as well and then run it back through the machine. Now, one of the things I love about this machine is it has a little bit of wiggle room, so I can let the edge of that folder overhang the platform and it'll pass through the machine with no problems. If you don't have that wiggle room in your machine, just be sure to keep it in mind when you're determining the placement of the paper in the folder. Again, the folder on the platform, embossing mat down, followed with cutting plate, and then I run it through the machine and we have our double embossed background. Now you can remember, you can use this technique with any folders and for any occasion. Now off screen, I embossed a green and a pink card base the same way, and I'm using one of my favorite inking techniques here. I'm going to start with a shade or 2 shades darker than the color of my cardstock. So I'm using a rosebud ink on this pale pink cardstock. I'm going to tilt my brush up, load it, well, first load it with ink, and then as I go to apply the ink to the paper, tilt the brush up and away from my cardstock. This allows me to apply a heavy pressure to the edges of the cardstock while fading it out towards the center. You're going to come in with black ink next, and you'd really need to do it in this order. First, the color of the cardstock, then the black, and then we come back in with the pink. The inking is the same process. Tilt your brush, heavy on the edges, lightening as you go towards the center. Now, the reason that I recommend that you start with the color ink first and then the black is the color ink soaks into the paper, saturating it, and then it makes it easier to blend all of those inks together. Now, once you're done and you're happy with it, just set it to the side. We're going to do some stamping with the Zombie Party stamp set. I'm going to be using the silhouette images. I stamped them with the VersaFine Onyx black ink, and then I ran them through my die cutting machine with the coordinating outline dies. And I did decide to ink the edges up with the same ink so that they blend in with the background a little bit better. So off screen, I stamped the large zombie word and I cut it out with a coordinating outline die. And then the smaller sentiments I trimmed those with my paper trimmer. Now it's just a matter of arranging the images. I used round foam adhesives. You can pick these up in the Whimsy Stamps online shop. I did add a few sequins to each of my cards, which you're going to see here in just a second. I do believe that's going to wrap us up for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And for more information on the products in this video, click the links directly below to head over to the Whimsy Stamps website to check it out. I appreciate you so much for spending time with me today. And until next time, please take care.